As I said before, great to have you all here, and great to have Hamish here to share some of his knowledge today on Classwork Zoom. So we're going to start with our acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations who long before us lived, loved and raised their children on this land. We also acknowledge all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families in our community and acknowledge their physical and spiritual connections to their lands. We come together today to learn, to share, and to journey together. We gather in prayer. Father of all, you gave us the dreaming. You have spoken to us through our beliefs. You have then made your love clear to us in the person of Jesus. We thank you for your care. You own us. You are our hope. Make us strong as we face the problems of change. We ask you to help the people of Australia to listen to us and respect our culture. Make the knowledge of you grow strong in all people so that you can be at home in us and we can make a home for everyone in our land. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Okay, so once again, welcome to Hamish Jeffries. He's our resident expert. We were fortunate when we floated this idea because this tool is a wonderful tool for managing student engagement, checking what's happening in class. And when we floated the idea of running this session, the person who actually wrote the piece of software offered to come and present, which was great. And we planned it up until I think yesterday, and we got an email when we realized that he was planning for the wrong day and he wasn't able to join us. But fortunately, he was going to present in combination with Hamish anyway. And so now Hamish has jumped in and he's taking over the reins. Our webinar today is being recorded, as all the others are. And if you go to the Summit website and click on the session resources, you can find the recordings. It takes a couple of hours after the actual webinar for us to get the footage, then we have to trim it up. So it'll be there definitely tonight, but I can't tell you exactly what time. As always, if you have questions, please have a look at the chat and ask the questions in the chat. And during this session, I will continue to monitor the chat and I'll interrupt Hamish as necessary. Okay, with that, I might ask Hamish to take over the screen.
Fantastic, I can do that. Let's go. Okay.
Just while he's getting sorted there, I will share that Hamish is a Learning Technologies Coordinator at one of our secondary schools in the Macarthur area.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, so yeah, thank you, Mark. So I am the teacher librarian in Learning Tech. So I do look after both roles at my school. And basically how this came about was through a few discussions with teachers and executive about some issues that we were having in our own school. So I floated this idea by Mark, and Mark was nice enough to take me up on it. So as we do with all our things across all our dioceses, I do have our success criteria for us today. And it's pretty basic. You should be able to, by the end of this, be able to use Zoom Classroom. Very different to the Zoom that we're using. And please don't confuse them. So basically, we're going to be able to use Classwork Zoom to reflect on our own teaching practice. So I'll show you what that looks like as we go on. So some things that we're going to answer today. So we're going to look at some of these challenges I'm sure you have in your own schools. So looking at how much time, how much work you're actually giving to your students. Are you giving too much? Do you need to spend more time on it? All the sorts of questions that our staff have been, or basically the parents have been sharing with us. From our school, we've been giving out a bit too much work from the parents' perspective. And this tool is hopefully going to help us address that issue for this upcoming term. So hopefully some of these questions have come up around your own schools. I'm hoping that we can address them. So, okay, so what it is. So it is very different to the Zoom that we're using. This tool is basically hijacks your Google Classroom. So it basically gives you all your classrooms and then lets you pull up any assignment that you've given to the kids. And then it basically constructs a timeline with any Google bit of software. So if you've used Docs, Sheets, Slides, it'll build a timeline and tell you how long the students have actually been working on your task. Okay, and then it tells you what they've copied, what they've pasted. If it's a group task, so maybe if, 2 or 3 kids are working on the same document, you can see who's contributed what exactly. So hopefully it'll give you a bit of an idea as to how much work is too much for your classes, how many kids are just copying and pasting, and hopefully it'll make you basically a more effective online teacher. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. So I'll just give you a quick introduction to what the interface looks like. And this is what it is. This is the example that we're going to use today. I'll give you, after this, I'll give you about 5 minutes or so to install the app. I'll put the app in the chat. Then I want you guys to install it, and then we'll have a look at it. So this is my Year 12 class. And you'll see here on the right-hand side, you'll see these little bars here. That is a time, an entry in which someone has actually worked on this task. So if I have a look at Sam over here, he's worked on this assignment task 1 between 8:30, so barely even 10 minutes. So maybe he's jumped in to have a look at his assignment. And then you can see here, I purposely chose this task because it was a group task, it was a group assignment. So there's just four people in this group, 4 people have collaborated on this said task, okay? And that's basically what it looks like. And it gets all your kids down the left-hand side here, along with all the documents that's in the assessment task, and then it'll build you a timeline, okay? So that's roughly what it looks like. So what I would like you guys to do is I'm gonna just copy, hold on, I'll get the link of the app. I'll paste it in the chat. And that way you guys, where's my chat? There we go. Okay, so I've just pasted that in the chat. That's the extension that we're going to be using. And then over on the right-hand side over here, okay, so in my desktop here, this is where it sits over here. And then once you click on it, this is what you'll be greeted with. So I'm just gonna give you guys about 5 minutes now just to jump on and download the app. So that way you guys can download it, and then I'll step you through it when we get to that point. Okay, so once you've downloaded the app, you'll see it's a little blue screen up here. If you click on that, you'll be greeted with this blank page. It's got my profile in the corner, and then it's got my list of Google classes over there. So I'll stop there and I'll let you guys download it first, because I don't want to explain this while you're still downloading and then you guys miss some crucial steps.
Hey Mitch, just while you're there, there's been a request in the chat to just repeat the last step. Yep.
So the link above here. So if you guys just jump on that link there.
That's the link that's in the chat?
In the chat, that's right, yep. Jump on that, click on that. It'll open you up to the Chrome store. And I just want you guys to add the extension. All right, that's all I want you guys to do now. And then once you've done it, I'll show you where to locate it in Chrome once you get there. All right. So you got a couple of minutes, and we'll run through it. Oh, good question. So, okay, at the moment, no. So all my classes at the moment, they do include the classes that have been archived. So they're not differentiated in any way. There's no option that I know of so far that you can actually get rid of some of the classes. Like, as you can see in some of mine, I've got some classes from 2018, 2017. So it's all classes. You can't pick and choose. You can't, archive them away and only look at the ones that you're working on this year, unfortunately. Definitely someone can pass on to Eric though. It's probably not too difficult to remove some of these classes, the archived ones anyway. Okay, are we right to go? Haven't lost anyone just yet? No, please stop me from going too quick. I don't want you to miss out. Okay, so if you open up Chrome, so I'll do this from the start. Okay, so my PowerPoint I was just on, over on my right-hand side over here, you can see that next to this little cupcake over here, it's a little blue screen for me. Yeah. just see if I click on that, it'll open up a new window. Okay, and this is what I've got. Okay, and it's just blank. Yep, has everyone got that far? Yep, okay. So now that we're here, so you choose the class that you're interested in looking at. So if I pick my current Year 12s, where are we, Year 12s, it'll load the students, and then it'll also load all the assignments from that classroom. So it's got my 14 students in it. Here are all my assignments, and I can pick as many as I want. Okay, so if I wanted to look at the work from, say, this week, so this upcoming week, so if I had posted that already, I can click on that. So let's just say it was, let's say this SQL task here, and maybe it was this website homepage submission, for an example. So I can click on both of those, and then it can build a timeline. And I just hit build timeline, and off it goes. Okay, so if I do that now, it'll take a little bit of time. Here we go now. Ooh. Oh, okay, because one of them's not a Google's. Okay, hold on. We'll do the one that I was going to do. Okay, pick that one. That one didn't work because it wasn't a Google. It didn't have Google files on it. It was like probably a Word document, or did I lose your mark? Okay, so you can see it now. It's building the timeline. So it's 1 of 14. It's going to go through and process all of those. Now, just in the presence of time, I've already gone ahead and done it. So this one over here is what it's going to produce. Okay. So this is what it looks like. All my kids down the left-hand side, and I can scroll down and I'll show all my kids. And all I'm looking for, these little blocks here, it'll tell me here 9 minutes he's worked in this block. So 10 hours and 21 minutes in total that he's actually worked on this task. And in this block alone, it's only 9 minutes. So these arrows, these little arrows here on the left-hand side, will take you back to when he last worked on it. All right, here we go. Here's another bit. He's worked on it for a minute there, so he probably just had it open in his browser. Another 10 minutes over here. So bits and pieces throughout. Because this is an assignment, this is done, I gave it to him about 5 weeks, 5 weeks worth of time to do it in. So this is quite an extensive timeline. So you can go back and look through every little chunk. Now, the things you need to be aware of when you're looking at your timeline, these little red lines here, this is actually something that is copied and pasted. All right, so I can, without basically going through the whole document, I can just look at this timeline, and I can see another one over here, bits and pieces. Looks like a bibliography is put in there. So I can go through and look at any of those red lines. I can look at and just do a little bit of investigation for plagiarism. And then I can also, this black line here, for example, that's a comment. So a comment made between two people in the people in that that group for that assignment. And that's basically all you need to know for that right-hand side of the timeline. Other little things that that can go amiss. If you have a look on the left-hand side, there's a lot of information here that's sort of tucked away. So if I look at Sam over here, so you see that the people on the left-hand side, it just tells you how many people are in the group. So if I had a look at Sam over here and clicked on that, here are the 4 that are in the group. And I can see here that, okay, these 2 aren't in the group actually, but these 2, so he's done 60% of the work, Jay's done 33% of the work. It's not a fair estimate because there is a practical component as well, but at a glance, it's a good way to have a look and just see who's contributed to the assignment, whether one person's done more than the other, whether it's been, 50-50 split. So this is, if you've got a group task that you want to do in the coming weeks, you can, put the groups on a classroom, then you can then get them to submit the one document, and then you can actually have a look and see who's written on it, how many, what the percentage is, whether they've worked equally, that sort of stuff. So that's that one. And then to the right, so the red here, people are the people in the groups. On the right-hand side, it actually tells me the total time that they've worked on the task. All right, so 3 hours 10, 13 hours. Now, the thing you got to be wary of, is if a kid, so for example, this one here, I would probably have a good guess that it's probably been left open on the laptop. Like the assignment was very good, but I don't think it was 13 hours worth of work. So and again, I can just go through, click on the arrows and actually have a look at how much work was done. So 17 minutes in that block. So what I would look for is if there was a huge amount of time, maybe, like this one here, that's a lengthy bit of time. So that, okay, he's probably legitimately worked on that. But what I would look for is a huge bar, which would probably mean that the laptop's been left open. Okay, so that's just something to be wary of. But if you're giving out work for the week, which we've been encouraged to do, then this is a really good way to basically put in the assignment that you've got for the week. So maybe term 2 week 1 is the title of your work. You just load up the assignment. It'll build up your timeline like it has here. And then you can go through and have a look who's copied, who's pasted, who's spent too much time on it, who, maybe someone's only spent 10 minutes on it. And that is obviously an engagement issue. And you might need to check in on that student, just find out if they've understood the task and those sorts of things. But basically that's all there is to it in terms of looking at their engagement. You can see how much time they've spent on it. You can see if it's a group task, if it's been done fairly. You can see if someone's copied and pasted. You can see if someone's made a comment, which is that black line over there. But that's basically the interface in a nutshell. Okay, so please let me know if there's any questions like this one here. Oh, good question. Updating in real time, from what I understand, yes, it does. So because it takes for example, if I was to share a document with all of you now, when it builds the timeline from up until the point that I've clicked on that timeline. So that makes sense. If I went back to the start, or even now, if I refresh over here, there's a refresh to timeline, it'll basically just do a scan of all the documents again and just see if there's any new additions to that document. Okay, does that sort of answer your question, Christine?
Hey, sorry, there's another question here around, is the timeline from when you assign the work until when it's due, or does it continue after that?
So it's basically for the length the assignment is there. So if the assignment is for this week, for example, and then they worked on that afterwards, you could still see it. Because all it's doing is jumping onto your Classroom, having a look at the documents that are part of that assignment and building the timeline from those documents. So there's no time frame on it. If you wanted to go back and if someone else was working on that task 3 weeks down the track, you could still build the timeline later on and see that work that's happened. Right, does that answer your question? Kind of. Lots of blank faces. Yes, no. So yeah, like I said, please, I'm happy to answer any questions. I've only been using this myself for a couple of weeks before the end of the term, just trialing it out before I rolled it out to staff. But it's a really good way to, I think, will help you sort of work out if you're going too quickly. No, they don't. I haven't. No, my students don't know that I have a timeline for them. Don't know if I need to share that with them, but I can.
I was actually thinking only a couple of minutes ago that would be an awesome thing to share with them, to show them that you've got that level of insight.
It doesn't hurt to, but yeah, look, it's applicable to primary, secondary, any task that you're doing that's online that has any of the Google Suite stuff. So if you're using Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, any of those G Suite apps, then yeah, it can build a timeline for you and map it for you and tell you what time, how much time they've been working on it, who's, if it's a group task, who's contributed what. Date it was due. Okay, let's just gonna go. Let's pull up what I'm on. So I'm just looking at Carolyn's question on a due date. So it doesn't give you the due date over here, but if you in Classroom, yeah, you would assign your due date that way, and then you would just look for that up until that time. So for their assignment, I'll go back to one of these examples. Okay, So this was due on, I think it was due on the 6th. Yeah, the Friday. So this is due on the 6th. So I can look here, anything after that, any substantial work that's been done. Well, here we go. It was due at midnight. So I can see that all these kids are bustling away till the absolute deadline. And it'll keep going. So if a student opened up the document, weeks later and kept working on it, it would still keep building the timelines per normal. But I know myself that my deadline was midnight on Friday the 6th. And that is when the task just basically ceased. Okay, so I can see here that the arrows on my left-hand side that I have to go back, there's none here on the right to go forward. So I know that there's no work that's been done since the deadline, which was the Friday, December 6th, 2019. Does that sort of answer that question? To an earlier date, so 2 months earlier. Yep, so so there's this little slider bar at the top here. I can go back as far as I need to. So right to when the task was given. If we can get there. Actually, go this way is probably quicker.
Yeah, that's very clunky. So what I wanted to know is, could you, it would be good if, say, it says Friday the 6th of December, if you could actually type in a date up there and it would take you back to that date.
Oh, right. Okay.
Can you see how you're doing it?
Easiest. What's that?
Yes, it's very slow.
It's a huge,
yeah.
It's a huge, if I look at even down here, look the amount of memory it's using, it's going to process a huge amount of data. So the easiest way if you want to look at the whole thing in a snapshot is to just zoom out of it.
Yeah, okay.
So this will give me,
so
the month of December, that's the work that was done.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Does that answer that question? Yep.
I just see a question here from Amanda.
I had a stage 1 question.
Yeah, that's the exact question I was looking at. So obviously Amanda's using it with stage 1 and tracking how long the students are spending on each task, which is
And Amanda, have you
cool.
noticed any differences in your students' sort of work or what they've been doing since you've told them that you've been using it? Yeah, okay. Interesting to know.
So
just to recap those lines again. Okay, so, sorry.
I was just going to say, Amanda responded in the chat that students have definitely changed their practice since they've understood that she can see how long they're working on something.
Maybe I think definitely from a secondary perspective, the junior kids, like the 7s to 10s, I think there'll be a good value in that, in telling them that you can see what work they've done and what's been copied and pasted. And I think you probably would see a little bit, I think their engagement would definitely alter from telling them. But just to recap some of the lines. So remember, the red lines are copied and paste. So chunks are, because I've zoomed out so far now, it might be a bit of an issue. So the red lines are copied and paste. The black lines are basically comments. So if I look at this one here, so this is a comment made by one of the students. It's been marked as resolved. So especially when students are collaborating, you can probably get lots of these little black lines, which sort of helps show you the sort of levels of communication that's been happening between the students, especially since we're not face-to-face. And then basically the other colors, just to help try and differentiate who's been working on what. So basically this purple one here, this is Mohit's work. The blue one down here is Hayden's work, and then purple is Dylan's work. So the lines are just trying to differentiate the different students in the class, basically. So what you care about red, you care about black lines. They're the two that you want to look out for. Red for copying, black for any comments that the students have made. And that should hopefully help you sort of work out how much work's too much. Have you been giving too much work out? Not enough. And the black lines, without having to go through every...
Give an assignment. I'm going to be making noise outside your door.
I'm sorry, you are...
I'm doing a conference right now, Karina. The men's talking.
Yeah, but you didn't tell me anything.
I did.
When did you give me a warning that you had a meeting?
Anyway, So that should please let me know if there's any questions or any issues you've got. Please reach out. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Because I've only been using this for 2 weeks myself, so definitely no expert on it, but it's definitely something that I'll be using for all my classes as a way to just track what they're engaging with, and without having to go through every kid's document. If they've got any comments, I can just see it in one snapshot. Okay.
I'll just jump in there. One of the things that came out when we were talking to Eric, the person who wrote it, was that since this COVID-19 lockdown, it's been getting an incredible number of downloads and uses, and obviously the servers are really pushed hard, as they are with Google Classroom and a whole range of other things, just because everybody's moving to this online world. So he said, every now and then it does fall over, and that's just part of creating a product that's getting, an awful lot, 10 times the use than what it would normally have.
Definitely. But yeah, look, Lucy, to answer your question about whether it's safe, because it's looking at, because the way Classroom works is Google Classroom, when you post an assignment and the kids submit their files, they actually go into your drive. So you'll see in your drive called a folder called Classroom, and you'll have all your classes in there and all the work gets put there. So when a kid actually submits the work, you become the owner of it and it sits in your drive. So it's when it's asking to access your files, yes, it is safe because it's after those files in that Classroom folder. Okay, does that answer your question a little bit? That's why, so it's not going through, it's not, there to look at all your files and, what you've got on your Google Drive. It's looking specifically at that Classroom folder. Yeah. So, yeah, that's, like I said, I know Mark, you're very generous giving me the hour, but it's a very, look, it is, I do understand it is a little bit clunky, but in terms of being able to check work at a glance, to see what they've done, this is the answer that I've sort of come up with for my stuff, and I think that this will work wonders in basically helping you work out what you're setting, whether you're setting too much work, and then you can easily track here. And I think this is where the real value of the tool is finding those students that have been left behind. So where a student, they might have marked it as done, but they've, maybe only submitted, 5 minutes worth of stuff. And that's an obvious, looking at this, it's an obvious cry for help that they obviously they've struggled with the task and they need a little bit more help. And you can then, email them and just find out where the breakdown in communication was, or what they struggled with, and all those sorts of things. So I'm hoping, but even, beyond this COVID-19 stuff, when you're back in the classroom, rather than have you to go to the Google Classroom and check through every single assignment and every single student, you can just pull up an assignment like we have here, and then you can just have a quick look in and see what learning's happened. So I think it's got tremendous use even after the COVID-19.
Yeah, could I just suggest, when it came to sitting down with a student to talk to them about the way they're working in your class, or to talk to parents, come parent-teacher night, every little bit of data we have that shows what students are doing, and how committed they are is useful.
Actually, sorry, Mark, before, just actually good idea too. So what you were just talking about there, Mark, if we go back to my class, if I untick all my students, so like Mark was saying, if I wanted to drill in on a specific student, so I just did the same thing. If I pull up Sam, and then I can click on all the assignments that we've done for term 2. So as a, quick parent-teacher thing, I mean, if you've got high school, you've got 6 classes, 30 kids in a class, it's a whole lot of class. You don't want to do this for every single student, but if there was a concern, and you wanted to quickly show a parent, you could drill this down to one student, all the assignments for the term, and then just build a timeline from that. And that'll also give you a bit of an idea as to what that student has been doing in your class as well. Right, so there's a tremendous amount of use for this, but yeah, you can do a whole class or drill in on that one student and have a look at all their assignments. So. No, look.
Just looking at that question from Bathurst, to me, that's by far the most efficient way to get work out to students.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as extra time, but you might have a different workflow to what I do, I guess.
No, so if this was me, so if I was giving, like, for example, my first lot of work, we've been working, especially in our TAS faculty, been looking at doing sort of online books. So we've been we'll give them those Google Docs, and they will work on that, and then we can just track that in Classwork Zoom. But if you haven't done that, and you're, for example, just posting a classroom assignment that's on Classroom, just with, I want you to do this, this, and this. As long as they're submitting to you a Google Doc, then this will work fine. So it'll be only the students that might have access to, Word or Pages at home, where that might be a little bit of a problem, because it'll only look at Google stuff. So just trying to answer that's this question. Yeah, got to be submitted by Classroom. Yeah. So how this works, this will look at your one classroom, look at your assignment, and then it pulls up all the data from that assignment. Yeah.
Just to tie in with, and I see that Ben's actually on this chat, but yesterday we were looking at giving feedback, and I pulled up an assignment that Ben had submitted, obviously a fake assignment. So I've pulled that classroom up within Classwork Zoom, and it's showing very clearly that Ben spent a total of 2 minutes on the assignment. And he pasted in twice.
100%, it's going to be copy and pasted.
It's much quicker way of working that out than the method I tried yesterday.
Yeah,
so Ben, you've been caught again.
This like the whole tool. Hopefully, we're very cautious of workloads and all that sort of stuff for teachers, and we don't want to give you more work than you need. So hopefully, this will just give you a chance to look at your assignment for the week or even the day, depending on how you're giving your work, and then give your whole classroom in a snapshot without having to go through every individual student's work to see what they've, engaged in, what they haven't. Thanks, Ben.
Okay. I don't think you did get any marks, Ben. Thanks very much, Hamish. I would ask people who are out there in the Zoom world, if you'd like to turn your microphone on and ask a question, or even add the question in the chat. Otherwise, I think we might be done for this session.
Yeah, I'm just going to put my address in the chat, Mark. So if anyone's got any questions after the fact, or people that have going to tune into the recording later on, if they do have any questions after looking at it, then they can flick me an email. We can answer that too.
Yeah,
Okay.
Hamish, it's Carolyn. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. I've just linked this up to mine.
Yep.
And some of my kids, it's saying like that they've only been on it for like 2 seconds or 46 seconds or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Could that be because that was when they were uploading it, or?
Was it a Google Doc, was it?
Yeah, Google Slide.
Okay. So you've assembled the timeline for the task, and you've got students with like 40 seconds and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
here's one with 1 second.
Okay, and the task has more than 1 second worth of work?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds stupid question.
Some don't.
So...
Tragically. Yeah, but this one I'm looking at definitely has more than 1 second.
Interesting. So is that okay, so the first thing I think of is if it was, what platforms do your students use? Like what devices do they have?
They've got iPads.
Okay, so the only issue would have, what's my screens? The only issue could have is if they've done it in another app, and then like Keynote. Well, I don't know if iPads have a Keynote equivalent, and if they've then transferred it, if they've
the Google Slides, or
so
Google Docs.
The reason I think if it's 43 seconds, it's all the time that they've spent on it, but they've got 10 slides.
Yeah,
I would be asking if they've used another program such as Keynote or whatever else, and then copied those slides and then pasted them.
I see.
So have a look. So what you would look for then is in that 43 seconds, have a look for those red lines and see if it's all red, then they've probably copied and pasted from one software onto another.
I was also
came up that said that it can't detect, if it's Google Slides, it can't detect copy and paste.
Oh.
So they said that they're working on that feature. But with an actual Google Slide, it can't detect copy and paste, only in a Google Doc.
Wow. Okay. I don't have an answer for you. I don't have iPads at my school.
Yeah.
Mark?
I'll test it on the next
Yeah.
one that I do and see if the same thing happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm not 100% sure.
You're
I
not
just
sure
think
either, Mark?
maybe it's a masking, maybe because it's the app, maybe it's masking what's happening in that app, as opposed to it being within the web browser. Maybe it's just not picking it up. But we might follow that up with Eric.
Yeah, because it might be done through the app rather than through a browser, which might be another issue.
The other thing, I mean, when you're looking at times when students have gone in, you know, fairly quickly, 40 seconds, and then gone back out, a lot of the time they open up a document, they work out they don't really want to work on it that day, or you know, it doesn't fit their particular needs, and so they leave again. So I mean, I imagine if you looked at how much time I spend on an average tab, there's a lot of on and off. You know, as you go back to your mail, you might jump into another tab to do some searching. So a lot of it has to do with the student's workflow as well. But there's definitely a possibility, and Chris has mentioned this, that iOS sometimes gets a bit confused about how long people spend within particular things. I know that Fortnite is massively underreported in time, so it might fit into the same category.
So the only other thing I probably should have explained is that when you look at the app here, so if I wanted to, so in your case here, where you're saying, you know, 43 seconds worth of work, and you actually want to see what's happening, rather than going back to Classroom to find the work, you can just, all you need to do is find, okay, if I want to look at Liam Rashley's over here, okay, he spent an hour 7, let's have a look at it. I can just click on it and it'll open up the document.
Yeah.
So it'll be, it's a one-stop shop. So if I wanted to open this up and then have a look and then comment, or just check what work's done, I'm going to do it the same way I would in Classroom. So
I have a feeling, because they have the Google Classroom app on their iPad, it's probably got something to do with that, I would say.
Yeah, can I just jump in, guys? I don't know the definite answer, but and Eric would be the best person to answer, but I would guess that when you're in Chrome on an actual, like a Chromebook or a computer, that you know, when you got multiple tabs open and you're in one tab at a time, and as you switch tabs and it moves, that's called focus. That the term for that is focus. So when that tab has focus, that's probably what it's tracking, is how long that tab is actually like active. And when you move to another tab, it would stop tracking time in that original tab. So that's the way I think it works on a web browser. But when you go into an app running on iOS, I'm guessing that it's got no way of actually tracking that. It just knows that, like, the app's open, but it doesn't have focus in the same way that a tab does in a browser. So I'm guessing.
Thanks for that.
Okay, so if you're finished, Hamish, and there's no more questions.
Yeah, I said I'm happy to hang around if people have questions or.
Great. So what we might do, because I know that some people will be keen to get moving, I'm just going to share my screen again and give you the link to the evaluation. So Hamish can stay online. We've got this room really for as long as we want, but Hamish will be around. We've still got our chat there, but if you are ready to go and finish up our evaluation, the same evaluation we've used for all of our sessions, and it's been awesome to get some feedback. You can find it on the website. You can point your phone camera at this QR code and it will take you to the website, or you can type in bit.ly and then the rest of that, and case does matter, and you'll find your way to the feedback form. It'll take you about 40 seconds, and it's really useful for us as organisers and also Hamish to reflect back on what people are saying